Welcome back, lovely ladies. If you want to become the woman of your dreams, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video. And join our Patreon for even more exclusive content. Now, let's dive into today's story.
Caleb had just finished his third semester at a local university, 20 years old and living on his own. He found himself with a bit more free time that winter, as most of his classes had wound down before break, and his closest circle of friends decided to host a massive costume party for all the acquaintances they had in the city. The theme was simple: arrive in a costume that left people guessing who you were. It was an open challenge to be unrecognizable. Everyone loved the idea of a night where judgments and preconceived notions were replaced by pure entertainment. Caleb, being somewhat reserved, was initially unsure about attending. Yet curiosity and a desire to blend into something grander than his usual life nudged him to accept. He had never been the star of any show. Even in high school, he would linger quietly in the back of the class, only really speaking up when called upon. Tall and lanky, with messy hair that he usually wore under a cap, he was known for sporting hoodies and well-worn sneakers. He was not necessarily shy, but he was often overshadowed by his more flamboyant friends. While his circle recognized him as creative and thoughtful, outsiders typically saw an unremarkable figure who rarely fussed over personal style. The announcement of the costume party, however, came like a bolt of inspiration. A few of Caleb's good friends, Raphael, Janelle, and Priya, were experts at organizing gatherings. They went all out, booking a sprawling venue with polished floors and tall windows, set to be decorated with swirling lights and a DJ station to pump out music well into the night. Every invitee was told to pick a costume or outfit that would make them completely unrecognizable, thus turning the party into a guessing game. People were already buzzing with ideas about going as famous celebrities, mythical creatures, fictional characters, or wearing extravagant masks. For Caleb, it sparked a different kind of excitement. He had a lingering curiosity that he had mostly pushed aside for fear it would be ridiculed or misunderstood. He was drawn to the idea of dressing in a style unlike anything he wore in daily life. The prospect of wearing something elegant, glamorous, and typically associated with someone else felt thrilling. He realized that a costume party, where anonymity was the primary objective, offered the perfect opportunity to explore a side of himself he had never fully allowed forward. As soon as he received the formal text from Raphael, confirming the date and location, Caleb spent several evenings alone in his small apartment, daydreaming about how he might completely transform himself. He initially thought of something comedic or absurd, like an alien or a zombie, yet that did not give him the spark he was looking for. He did not want to scare people, nor did he want to be just another guest. He wanted to feel luminous, captivating, and different from his everyday life. He wanted for once to stand out for reasons beyond his usual quiet presence. Late one night, after scrolling past dozens of potential costume ideas online, he stumbled on images of glamorous dresses and makeup tutorials. A question surfaced in his mind. What if he presented himself in a distinctly feminine way? He clicked on a video that showcased a sparkling gold dress, the model's hair styled in loose curls, makeup done with precision, and heels that made her legs look impossibly long. A small thrill raced through him. There was something about that transformation, going from everyday clothing to something undeniably feminine, that made him stop and stare. No one would suspect that it was him. No one would recognize him if he went all in with makeup, a wig, and a form-fitting dress. He would, in effect, become someone entirely new. At first, the idea made him blush. He had never tried on anything specifically labeled as women's clothing. He had worn comfortable sweatpants and t-shirts for years, more out of habit than preference. He knew this direction would be a big leap outside his comfort zone. But the more he sat with the idea, the more it felt right for this unique event. This was a chance to see how it felt to be looked at differently. Could he summon the courage to present himself in a way that contradicted everything people associated with his usual style? He mulled it over for 2 days. He spent hours watching tutorials on how to contour and apply eyeshadow, thinking about which color palettes might highlight his features. Though he had never done anything like this, he was fascinated by how makeup could remold facial structure or draw attention to certain features. It was, in essence, an art form, and something about it resonated with him. Eventually, he made his decision. He was all in. He was going to present himself as a woman at this costume party, but not just in a half-hearted way. He would go the full distance, ensuring nobody would ever guess it was him. One afternoon, he quietly slipped out of his apartment and headed downtown to a boutique that specialized in second-hand evening wear. Under the guise of simply browsing for a friend, he combed through the racks of dresses, looking for something that would fit him well enough. He stumbled upon a sequined midnight blue dress. It was knee-length with a subtle slit up one side, the material catching and reflecting light in a dazzling pattern of tiny sparkles. The neckline was modest enough, but still revealed a little bit of collarbone. It seemed to his eye like something that could be both elegant and fun. Grabbing it from the rack, he gingerly made his way to the dressing room, muttering to the shop attendant that he was checking the size for a relative. The attendant simply nodded, accustomed to all sorts of reasons people had for buying clothing that might not match their typical style. With the curtain drawn, Caleb felt his heart pounding. He stripped off his hoodie and jeans, carefully stepped into the dress, and pulled it up around his waist. The fabric pressed against his form, tighter than anything he had worn before. He tugged the zipper up and slipped his arms through the straps. Turning to the mirror, he was both shocked and captivated. He had never seen himself in a dress, and the reflection caught him completely off guard. He looked different, even though he still had his messy hair, no makeup, and unshaven face. The silhouette alone felt transformative. His lean frame actually worked to his advantage, the dress hugging him in a way that emphasized certain lines and gave him a narrower shape at the waist. The color of the sequins set off his eyes. He turned side to side, checking how it draped over his hips and how it moved when he took a step. Though he felt a flood of nerves and a slight tremor of embarrassment, he also felt a surge of excitement. It was as if he had stumbled on a new form of expression that had been waiting to be explored. He bought the dress that afternoon, placing it carefully in a garment bag and tucking it into his car's trunk. Next, he went to a wig shop. Stepping inside, he was greeted by rows of mannequin heads sporting every style imaginable: short bobs, long curls, neon colors, or subdued browns and blondes. The shop attendant, an older woman with a warm smile, asked if he needed assistance. Caleb managed to mumble that he was going to a costume party and needed something dramatic. The attendant's eyes lit up, and she guided him to a section of longer wigs, pulling out various styles and letting him feel the texture. Eventually, he chose a dark brown wig with soft, shoulder-length curls. It had a natural sheen that caught the light, and the curls framed the face in a gentle way. He could already imagine how it might enhance the look, especially once he had the dress on. He purchased the wig, relieved that the woman did not pry too much. And even if she did have questions, he told himself this was normal for a costume event. People bought wigs for all sorts of reasons. For the next week, leading up to the party, Caleb became almost secretive. He would arrive home from his part-time job, lock his apartment door, and spend time practicing makeup. He followed step-by-step videos that taught him how to apply a light foundation, contour his cheeks, shape his eyebrows, and choose an eyeshadow that made his eyes pop. His inexperience showed at first. He poked himself in the eye with a mascara wand or smudged lipstick across his cheek by accident. But by the third or fourth night, his hands grew steadier. He discovered that with enough patience and the right brushes, he could outline his lips and blend colors in a way that made his features stand out in new ways. Standing before the mirror, he would lift the wig onto his head, adjusting it to sit just right, letting the curls graze his shoulders. He experimented with different ways to hold the hair back, maybe a small clip to one side, or letting it hang freely. Each time, he felt that same electric charge when he looked at the reflection. He almost did not recognize himself, in a thrilling way. The face staring back seemed confident, radiant, and entirely liberated from the constraints of his usual routine. One challenge was learning to walk in heels. He ordered a pair online after measuring his foot size carefully. They were a classic pair of black pumps, not too high, but still enough to significantly change his posture and give him a more graceful line to the leg. The first time he tried walking from his bedroom to the kitchen, he almost toppled over. It took repeated practice, short strides, and mindful steps to get the hang of it. Gradually, he trained himself to maintain balance. By the end of the week, he could walk across the living room with something resembling poise, even if it felt a bit unnatural. During this period, he spoke to his friends only through text, carefully avoiding all mentions of what his costume would be. Everyone, after all, was trying to keep their costumes a secret. Janelle sent messages hinting that she might wear an elaborate mask, while Raphael boasted about renting something that would turn him into a medieval knight. Priya mentioned she had a concept so wild that it would blow everyone's minds. Caleb only smiled at his phone and typed back that he was planning something nobody would see coming. He felt anticipation flutter in his stomach every time he thought of the big reveal. When the day of the party finally arrived, Caleb spent almost the entire afternoon preparing. He rearranged his apartment so he could have the maximum counter space to lay out all of his makeup. He hung the blue sequined dress on the back of the bathroom door, making sure it did not wrinkle or snag. He set a portable mirror on his coffee table, propped up his phone to watch a final tutorial, and began. First came the foundation, applied in careful circles. Then he traced a thin line of eyeliner across his upper lids, trying not to blink too hard. He dusted a delicate shade of blue and silver eyeshadow that would complement the shimmer of the dress. He contoured his cheeks lightly, sculpting them higher than they appeared in his everyday life, a touch of blush for warmth. He finished his eyes with mascara and, after much deliberation, opted for a dark red lipstick that would pop against his complexion. Lastly, he placed the wig on his head, securing it with small clips beneath. Brushing out a few curls, he checked the mirror. He noticed a sparkle in those eyes. Slipping into the dress took care. He did not want to smudge the makeup, so he guided the sequins gently over his shoulders. The snug fit around his torso felt even more pronounced than when he first tried it in the store. He zipped up the back, carefully adjusted the straps, and made sure the hem sat just above his knees. Then came the heels. He eased his feet into them, standing up slowly to steady himself. A final glance in the mirror showed a figure that was undeniably glamorous, the midnight blue sequins catching the dim lamplight in his living room. He hardly recognized the person staring back. She looked poised, bold, and ready to take on a room full of people. Before walking out the door, he took a deep breath. A twinge of nerves fluttered in his chest, but there was excitement too. This was something entirely new for him, a boundary he had never crossed. He was about to attend a social gathering in a persona that felt surprising, and somehow, if he was honest, exhilarating. Arriving at the venue was a bit of an adventure. Caleb took a cab, not wanting to risk driving himself in heels. Stepping out onto the sidewalk, He felt the crisp evening air against the exposed skin of his arms and legs. He pulled a light jacket closer around himself, discreetly hiding most of his outfit from anyone passing by. The venue, a large event space with tall, decorative windows, was already lit with strands of lights winding around columns. The muffled thump of music vibrated through the concrete steps. People dressed in all sorts of costumes filed in, some wearing elaborate masks with feathers, others dressed as historical figures, and a few in silly outfits like giant fruits or cartoon characters. He handed his ticket to the doorman, who also happened to be wearing a colorful mask, trying to remain composed. With each click of his heel against the polished floor, that swirl of anticipation grew. He spotted Janelle across the room near the entrance, but she was wearing a Venetian-style mask and a glittering gown. He could not even be sure it was her. Similarly, there was a medieval knight standing next to her, presumably Raphael, but again, he was so covered in armor that there was no way to know. This suited Caleb perfectly. If he could not immediately identify them, it meant they were less likely to identify him. At the coat check, he slipped off his jacket to fully reveal the dress. The attendant, a college-aged woman, gave him a cursory glance and a smile, then hung up his jacket without a second thought. Feeling a slight flush of confidence, Caleb glided into the main room. The music was pulsing. Lights in shades of pink, blue, and white flickered above the dance floor. There were tables along the edges, set with small decorations and bowls of snacks. In the center, a large open area invited people to dance. On the far side, bartenders were mixing drinks, their own faces partly obscured by simple black masks. Caleb moved deeper into the crowd. He could feel curious eyes on him, or on the persona he was portraying. The silhouette of the dress was flattering. It clung to him in all the right places and shimmered with each sway of his hips. The makeup and wig combined to soften his features, creating a glamorous figure that easily passed for a woman in this dimly lit atmosphere. People parted slightly as he walked, some leaning in to comment to their friends, obviously intrigued by the confident figure in sequins. Once he was a few steps onto the dance floor, he started to move with the music. At first he felt stiff, uncertain how to navigate the movements in heels. The bass pounded in his chest, matching the accelerating rhythm of his heartbeat. Slowly, though, he remembered the many private practice sessions in his living room. He swayed his hips, found a balance in the narrow heels, and let the music guide him. In fact, it began to feel surprisingly natural, as if the swirl of the dress around his legs gave him permission to dance more freely than he ever had before. A group of costumed dancers nearby noticed him and cheered him on. One wore a feathered mask with a floor-length outfit. Another was dressed as a 1920s flapper. Their enthusiasm was infectious. They beckoned him closer, and soon he was in the middle of their circle, laughing and twirling. He realized his usual shyness was absent. He felt a spark of spontaneity. Ordinarily, if he had shown up at a party in his normal attire, he might have hovered by the snack table, sipping a drink, occasionally nodding along to the music. Yet something about this new appearance acted like a shield, or perhaps a key, that unlocked a more vibrant side of him. When the first song ended, one of the dancers, her face hidden by a beaded mask, leaned in and said, "Girl, that dress is stunning. Where did you find it?" Caleb faltered for a moment at being called girl. He felt a mixture of flattery and nerves. Maintaining a higher-pitched voice, he answered, "Oh, I found it a few weeks ago. I'm glad you like it." She smiled, gesturing to someone else behind her. "We've been trying to figure out who everyone is tonight, but you're definitely not someone I recognize. Mystery accomplished." He laughed, feeling a tinge of relief. If even these strangers had no inkling that he was, in fact, a tall, skinny college guy, then his costume was a success. Buoyed by that confidence, he continued to dance and talk with them, letting the evening weave a kind of magic he had never experienced before. Meanwhile, across the room, Some of his friends were equally unrecognizable. Janelle, in her Venetian gown, spied the figure in the sparkling dress and wondered who it could be. At a glance, she assumed it was another friend from a different circle. Raphael, clanking around in his metallic night outfit, kept trying to guess which guests were which. Priya, wearing an elaborate ensemble that combined elements of a futuristic suit with a large mask, bounced around from one group to another, taking guesses on who they might be chatting with. None of them realized that the woman in the midnight blue dress, smiling and moving with graceful steps in heels, was Caleb. After a while, a slow song replaced the fast-paced beats. The lights dimmed, and couples formed small clusters, swaying under soft, rotating spotlights. Caleb found himself lingering at the edge of the dance floor, heart thumping, the glow in his chest still very much alive. He considered stepping away to grab a drink. That was when he felt a gentle tap on his shoulder. Turning around, he was surprised to see a figure dressed in a simple tuxedo and wearing a small white mask. The eyes behind the mask sparkled with friendliness. In a voice that suggested amusement, the stranger asked, "Would you like to dance?" For a moment, Caleb's breath caught. Part of him wanted to flee, unsure how to handle such direct attention. But another part reveled in the idea of blending seamlessly into this role, so he nodded politely. The stranger smiled, offered a hand, and led him onto the floor. They began to sway with the music, and even though he was not used to being the shorter partner, his heels only brought him up to this person's chin, he decided to enjoy the moment. They talked in quiet tones, but the music mostly drowned out what each of them was saying. Caleb could not quite figure out who might be behind the mask. He thought he recognized the timbre of the voice, but the crowd and the muffled environment made it hard to be certain. Instead of overthinking it, he leaned into the music and let the dance happen. Occasionally, the stranger smiled at him through the mask, and he found himself returning the expression. There was a sense of unreality to the moment. Here he was, presenting as a woman at a lavish party, slow dancing with someone who found her intriguing. The idea would have seemed impossible just a week ago, but it felt oddly right in that fleeting span of time. When the song ended, the stranger led Caleb off the dance floor, gave a small bow, and with a brief squeeze of Caleb's hand, disappeared into the throng. Caleb stood there, slightly stunned, the echo of the slow rhythm still pulsing in his chest. Shaking his head, he decided to grab a glass of water. His feet were beginning to ache from the constant pressure of the heels, and his throat felt dry after so much dancing. He moved to the drink station, took a cup, and sipped, trying to steady the rush of excitement in his system. After all, it was just a dance, yet it felt deeply symbolic of something else, like a door had opened. A door he did not even fully realize existed until this night. He found himself standing near a group of people laughing uproariously, their masks lifted just a bit so they could sip their cocktails. One of them wore a half-face mask, adorned with intricate swirls of gold. Caleb recognized that lively voice. It was Janelle. She was explaining something with animated gestures, and the cluster around her burst into giggles. Caleb lingered, curious if she would recognize him. He moved closer, pretending to look for snacks on the table. Janelle glanced in his direction and gave a polite smile, but her eyes darted away without the faintest flicker of recognition. He nearly laughed out loud. They had been friends for years, yet not even a spark of familiarity crossed her face. If he spoke to her for too long, maybe she would notice something in his voice or mannerisms. But in this environment, with so many strangers mingling and the music continuing to shift, it was easy to slip in and out of groups without suspicion. The night rolled on. Faster songs came back on, and with them, waves of costumed revelers returning to the dance floor. Caleb found himself continually drawn to the center, letting the music vibrate through him. At times, he even forgot that he was wearing clothes so different from his normal wardrobe. The weight of the wig, the slight pinch of the heels, the shimmering dress, they felt like an extension of who he was in this moment. It was a state of pure energy, of motion, and of letting everything else fall away. By the time midnight approached, the party was in full swing. People had been guessing each other's identities, with some surprising reveals and others remaining stubbornly unsolved. Janelle, Raphael, and Priya had reassembled near the DJ booth, apparently comparing notes. Caleb watched them from a distance, occasionally drifting over to hear their banter. "I still have no idea where Caleb is," said Janelle, scanning the room. "He said he would be here, but I can't find him anywhere. For all I know, he's that guy in the werewolf costume, or maybe he's not here at all." Priya shrugged. "Same here. I've been trying to find him. He told me he had something planned, so I assumed I'd recognize him immediately, but maybe not. Honestly, tonight is so much fun. Everyone looks amazing." Raphael clanked in his night outfit, the visor up, revealing a face half covered with black and silver paint. "There's that sparkly woman out there. She's dancing like crazy. Could that be him?" he joked, pointing to Caleb on the dance floor. Janelle snorted. "Yeah, right. That's definitely not him." She watched for a moment as Caleb continued to move with the beat, the curls bouncing around his face. "She's got confidence, though. I bet she's performed or modeled or something." Caleb felt a warm flush spread across him, both from the intensity of the dancing and the satisfaction of hearing that even his close friends had not caught on. He decided to keep his distance a bit longer. He was savoring the unique freedom he felt. At one point, Priya danced her way over to him, shouting over the music, "Hey, love your dress! Have we met?" But just as quickly, she was swept away by another pair of friends, leaving Caleb to smile ruefully at the near brush with recognition. Eventually, the DJ played a track that made nearly everyone flood the dance floor. It was an upbeat, well-known tune with a driving bass line. Caleb tossed his head back, arms swaying in time with the crowd. In that moment, he experienced a vivid clarity. He was more alive in those heels, with that makeup swirling around in that sparkling fabric, than he had felt in years wearing his standard jeans and sneakers. The realization was exhilarating. This was not just a masquerade for him. It carried a deeper resonance that he had never expected. The swirling lights, the pulsing music, and the knowledge that people saw him as an entirely different person made every beat of his heart feel more pronounced. When the song ended, people began to cheer. The DJ announced that it was nearly time for the unmasking, urging everyone to gather near the stage for the big reveal. This was the moment Caleb had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. The instructions at the start of the night were clear. Once the final countdown ended, everyone would remove masks or reveal themselves, letting the crowd see who was behind each costume. It was part of the fun, after all. Swept along by the throng, Caleb ended up near the front. Janelle, Raphael, and Priya eventually pressed through the crowd, standing not far from him. He could see them in the overhead lights, each ready to lift off their respective masks or open their helmet. His heart rate escalated. In a few minutes, they would know it was him. Would they be shocked? Intrigued? Amused? He was not entirely sure how they might react. This night had been so transformative that he hesitated to step back into his usual identity. The DJ started a countdown, with the entire room chanting along. 10, 9, 8. The excitement in the air was palpable. People were smiling, giggling, some looking at each other in anticipation. 3, 2, 1. All around him, masks came off. Dozens of partygoers gasped and laughed in recognition. Raphael lifted his metal visor, revealing his grinning face. Janelle unhooked her Venetian mask, blinking in the sudden brightness. Priya took off her futuristic mask, flipping her hair back. They turned to each other with exclamations, "I knew it was you!" or "Oh my gosh, that was so elaborate!" And then they turned toward him. Caleb stood there, still holding on to his wig. He hadn't lifted it yet. The moment felt surreal. Janelle blinked, her eyes taking in the perfectly contoured face, the luscious curls. Recognition flickered across her features. She parted her lips, and before she could form a word, Raphael let out a stunned, "Caleb?" His friend's expression was one of genuine shock, then a bright grin. "Dude, that's you? No way!" Priya's jaw dropped. "Oh my gosh, I never would have guessed. You look amazing." A few other friends from the wider circle hovered nearby, their looks shifting from surprise to admiration. Laughter and murmurs rippled through the group. Caleb felt his cheeks flush. It was both thrilling and nerve-wracking to finally reveal himself. He had prepared for the reveal, imagining it might be funny or dramatic, but now that it was here, it felt overwhelmingly real. Janelle took a step closer, her voice hushed amid the clamor. "Is that you under all that? Are you serious? You look incredible." She reached out tentatively, as though wanting to touch his wig to confirm it was real, but stopping short out of respect. Still not removing the wig, Caleb nodded, his heart hammering against his ribcage. He saw that she was studying his face, now up close, and realizing the care he had taken with the makeup and every little detail. He couldn't quite articulate the tremor of uncertainty and pride coiling inside him. Priya exclaimed loudly, "I love this! I'm so jealous! You've out-costumed us all!" She clapped him on the shoulder. People around them in the crowd were stepping away or milling about, reuniting with others they recognized. The big reveal was in full swing. Caleb noticed that some onlookers gave him nods of approval, while others shot second glances, perhaps reevaluating how meticulously he had transformed himself. Raphael, removing the last piece of his armor, wiped sweat off his brow. "Wow, that was a risk, my friend. I respect that. Honestly, you pulled it off better than I ever could have imagined." Janelle, however, was looking at Caleb with more intensity. Something in his eyes must have given away how deeply this went. She gently touched his forearm. "Hey, you okay?" she asked, pitching her voice low so that only he could hear. "You seem like you're not ready to let go of this." Caleb's gaze flickered. He had spent the entire night lost in this persona, and the thought of simply taking off the wig and going back to his old life felt jolting. He realized with sudden clarity that he didn't want to strip away these feelings he had experienced. The sense of freedom was so profound that he could scarcely imagine leaving it all behind. He drew in a shaky breath, tears pricking the corners of his eyes. "It's just," he began, his voice trembling slightly. He paused, trying to find the words that might explain how this costume didn't feel like just a costume. Finally, he managed, "It's more than I expected. Wearing this, being like this, it feels like a relief." Janelle's expression softened with empathy. "I see." She glanced around, noting the swirl of laughter and conversation that surrounded them. "Do you want to step outside for a minute? Get some air?" Caleb nodded, swallowing past the lump in his throat. Together, they made their way through the crowd, Janelle politely guiding people aside as they navigated to a side door that led to a small outdoor patio. The night air was cool, and it brushed against Caleb's bare arms. His cheeks were warm, either from dancing or from the swirl of complex emotions inside him. Standing under a string of lights that cast a soft glow across the patio, Janelle turned to him. "So, I don't want to pry too much, but you seem really overwhelmed." Caleb gave a slight nod, taking another shaky breath. "It's not just that I wanted to be unrecognizable. I actually liked being like this." The makeup, the dress, dancing in these heels. I didn't think I'd feel so alive. Janelle reached out and squeezed his hand gently. Hey, you don't owe anyone an explanation. You made a big splash tonight and you clearly put a lot of care and effort into this. If it felt right, that's all that matters. She paused, then asked quietly, Do you want to keep the wig on? He realized with a jolt that the rest of the party was probably done revealing costumes, and here he was, the only one who had not fully undone his transformation. He brushed a hand along the wig, feeling the curls beneath his fingers. I don't know. Part of me wants to keep it on forever, he admitted, tears threatening to spill over. I'm afraid if I take it off, this feeling will vanish. She nodded, letting the silence speak for a moment. Cars on the nearby street rumbled past, and distant laughter from inside the venue drifted through the open door. I'm glad you shared that with me, Janelle said softly. If this is something that resonates with you, it doesn't have to be just a one-time thing, and it's okay to be confused or uncertain about it. What matters is that it brought you joy. Caleb's eyes watered, and he quickly dabbed at them with the back of his hand, cautious not to smudge his makeup too much. He could feel the delicate eyelashes he had glued in place, fluttering against his cheeks. Thank you, he whispered. I was scared that everyone would mock me or think it was weird, but all I've gotten tonight is support. She offered him a small, kind smile. We love you, Caleb. We might tease you now and then because that's what friends do, but we also support you. Look, if you're not ready to go back in there without the wig, that's fine. If you want to leave it on all night, we'll just go with it. No pressure. He nodded again. The wave of emotion running through him was powerful. It was both a moment of raw vulnerability and an exciting glimpse of how things could be if he took further steps. He thought back to all the nights he spent in his apartment, learning these skills, feeling a blossoming sense of possibility. Now it was out in the open, and surprisingly, it did not feel like the end of anything. It felt more like a new door was open. He and Janelle lingered outside for a few more minutes, letting the crisp air calm them both. She asked if he needed more time, and he said he was okay. So they returned to the main hall, where the party was still in full swing, albeit with people dropping their disguises and returning to normal conversation. Caleb walked through the crowd in his glittering dress, wig firmly in place, receiving nods and compliments from all directions. Many said, I can't believe you pulled that off, or you won best costume in my book, along with supportive winks. Raphael met him near the snack table and gave him a gentle slap on the back. You're a braver man than me, he joked, but it was laced with genuine respect. Seriously, though, that was impressive. Priya, munching on some chips, added, I love that you committed to the look. Those heels are killer. I can barely wear platforms for more than an hour, and you've been in those shoes all night. Caleb smiled softly, dipping a chip into some salsa. Standing there in a group of his closest friends, still dressed in a feminine persona, he felt no judgment from them, just curiosity and camaraderie. They asked a few questions about how he learned to do makeup so well, and he explained the hours he spent on tutorials. They marveled at the wig and how it suited him. The conversation flowed easily, as if this unveiling was simply another aspect of who he was, worthy of interest but not condemnation. In the final hours of the party, Caleb decided to keep the wig and dress on. He rejoined the dancing for a while, now with Janelle and Priya at his side. They laughed together, took pictures, some silly, some that they would probably look back on for years. Although the official theme of unrecognizability had ended, he remained in that persona because he wanted to, not because he had to. It felt like the most natural thing in that moment. When the venue lights came up, signaling that the party was winding down, people started gathering their belongings. Caleb found a quiet corner to rest his aching feet, leaning against the wall, and taking in the sight of exhausted but elated guests. Some were yawning, others exchanging numbers, and still others discussing where to go for a late-night meal. The wig itched a bit at his scalp, and the tightness of the dress had become a bit constricting, but he found he was reluctant to peel away the layers of this new image. Raphael, wearing casual clothes under most of his knight armor, approached Caleb with a mild grin. "It's been a wild night," he said. "We're heading out for tacos if you want to come, but if you need time to change or something, let me know." Caleb considered it. He was hungry too, but the idea of stepping into a late-night eatery in full glam made him pause. However, a look at Janelle and Priya, who were already shrugging into their coats, gave him courage. He thought, why not? The costume was not hurting anyone. "I'll just throw on my jacket and go as I am," he said. Raphael's eyebrows shot up, then he smiled broadly. "All right, let's do it." And so, much to Caleb's mingled excitement and nervousness, the small group ventured out onto the street. The city lights glinted off his sequined dress, and his heels clicked on the pavement. A few passers-by gave them curious looks, but the presence of costumed revelers was still fairly common in this district, especially after large parties. They walked a few blocks until they found the taco joint, an all-night place that served quick meals to the nightlife crowd. The neon sign buzzed overhead, and they ducked inside, grabbing a booth in the corner. As they settled in, Janelle tried to wrangle a menu from the next table. Priya giggled at the stares from a couple of diners who hadn't realized there might still be people in costume at that hour. Caleb felt his pulse slow down a bit. The nerves he had at the start of the night had been replaced by a unique sense of peace. He was in full makeup, wearing a dress, and sitting in a taco joint with his friends. Ordinarily, the idea would have sounded absurd. And yet, here he was, living it. He noticed a wave of relief settle over him. Nobody was openly mocking him, and his friends were supporting him. Their lively conversation about the best salsas, or which combination of tacos to try, reminded him that they saw him as the same person, no matter how he dressed. Midway through their meal, Priya reached across the table, giving Caleb a conspiratorial look. "So, do you think you'll do this again?" she asked casually, nibbling on a piece of tortilla chip. He chewed thoughtfully, aware that all eyes were on him. "I think so," he answered, voice quiet but steady. "Not sure when or how, but I definitely want to keep exploring these looks, at least sometimes." Raphael raised his plastic cup in a mini toast. "Well, let me know if you ever need a sidekick in an over-the-top costume. This was fun." Janelle placed a gentle hand over Caleb's, her voice brimming with warmth. "I'm here for you if you ever want help with outfits or makeup or anything else. You did an amazing job on your own, but if you'd like someone to talk to or experiment with different looks, count me in." The conversation could have turned awkward, but it never did. They spent another half hour sharing impressions of the party, joking about how some people's costumes failed to hide who they were at all, or how others had stayed completely secret until the last second. Caleb found himself laughing without constraint, part of him still reeling from how drastically the night had changed him. When they finally left the restaurant, they parted ways on the sidewalk, each heading to separate rides. Janelle gave Caleb a hug, and he stood there, watching as the group dispersed under the quiet city lights. He took a cab home, heels off this time, cradled in a plastic bag while he massaged his aching feet in the back seat. The driver paid him no special attention, likely used to ferrying costumed riders after events. Caleb stared out the window, the rush of the night still coursing through him. When he arrived at his apartment, he lingered for a moment in the hallway mirror, studying his reflection. The makeup was smudged here and there, the wig slightly askew, but the essence remained. He recognized something in the eyes looking back at him, a spark that had not been there before, a sense of possibility that he was not ready to abandon. Stepping inside, he turned on a small lamp and locked the door behind him. The apartment was silent. He kicked off the last remnants of his shoes, then let the wig slip from his head, placing it gently on a styrofoam stand he had purchased for it. Running a hand through his flattened hair, he felt odd without the weight of the curls. Finally, he unzipped the dress and peeled it off, carefully draping it over a chair. He stood there in the low light, glancing at the reflection in a nearby window. He looked tired, emotional, and yet triumphant in a way he had never experienced. He made his way to the bathroom to begin removing the makeup. Each step of the cleansing process brought back a flood of memories from the night. The astonished looks on his friends' faces, the swirl of lights on the dance floor, the slow dance with that masked stranger, the lingering conversations on the patio. He washed off the foundation, the blush, the eyeshadow, all swirling down the drain. When he was done, he stared into the mirror. His usual face looked back, but something in his expression was different. Flipping off the bathroom light, he padded into his bedroom and slid under the covers. He didn't bother to put on pajamas, just wore his boxers and a t-shirt, letting the exhaustion wash over him. But sleep did not come right away. A buzz of energy from the evening continued to course through him, along with a swirl of thoughts. He had learned something crucial tonight, that the persona he had created for the party was not just an act, and that he actually felt more at ease with elements of that transformation than he ever would have guessed. All of this opened new territory in his mind, urging him to imagine a future where he could continue experimenting with clothing, makeup, and expression. Despite the questions racing through him, he also felt a calm sense of clarity. Maybe he didn't need all the answers immediately. Maybe it was enough to know that dressing in that sequined dress, perfecting his makeup, and dancing with such abandon was no mere whim. It illuminated an aspect of himself that he was not prepared to dismiss. Knowing his friends were supportive took a weight off his shoulders. He could still talk to them about it in the days to come, figure things out step by step. His eyelids finally grew heavy, and he let the blanket of fatigue pull him into sleep. That night, his dreams were vivid, replaying scenes from the party in looping fragments. The swirl of the wig against his cheeks, the cheering crowd as the final countdown ended, the press of Janelle's hand on his shoulder as she asked if he was okay, the reflection of himself in the taco shop window, shining under the fluorescent lights. Through it all, he felt a sense of calm and unspoken excitement. He drifted deeper into slumber, the lines between costume and reality gently blurring into something he no longer wished to ignore. When morning arrived, he woke slowly, the glow of the sun filtering through the thin curtains of his bedroom. He opened his eyes, half expecting to feel the brush of curly hair, but of course the wig was on its stand in the living room. He could still smell a trace of the hairspray and a hint of the perfume he had spritzed on the previous night. The clock on the bedside table read just past 10. Normally, he would have been up earlier, but after the late party, he allowed himself the extra rest. Sliding out of bed, he shuffled into the bathroom to splash water on his face. Drying off, he caught sight of himself again. No makeup, messy bedhead, the same old t-shirt. Yet there was something about his expression, maybe the hint of a smile. He recalled how it felt to stand in that midnight blue dress, every sequin reflecting tiny flecks of light. He remembered the wave of confidence surging through him when the music guided his steps. It was not a dream. It was something real, a memory he could still feel in his body. He made a quick breakfast of toast and eggs, then padded back to the living room. His eyes landed on the wig, the dress, the heels that had been cast off near the door. For a moment, he pictured himself tidying them away in the closet, hiding them behind a stack of boxes. That had been his original plan. After all, it was a costume, right? But now, looking at them, he felt reluctance to tuck them away, as though he would never use them again. Setting his plate aside, he gently lifted the dress, running his fingers over the sequins, remembering that rush of euphoria the first time he tried it on. A faint smile curved across his face. He folded it neatly, placed it on a nearby chair. Then he considered the wig, noticing how carefully he had set it on the stand to keep its shape. Even with the slight tangles from hours of dancing, it still looked striking. Without hesitating, he removed it from the stand and set it on the coffee table, as though preparing to wear it again soon. Moments later, his phone buzzed with a text. Janelle. "Hey, you awake? Just wanted to check on you. Last night was amazing. Hit me up when you can. Also, you left quite the impression. People are talking about your costume in the group chat. All good stuff." He typed back. "I'm good. Just made breakfast. Definitely need to talk soon. Still processing everything, but I feel good." He hesitated, then quickly erased the word good, replacing it with really good, before hitting send. Letting the phone drop onto the couch, he sat back. The rest of the day stretched before him, free from obligations. He realized he could do anything he wanted, and for the first time in a long while, the idea of choosing what to wear felt like an open invitation to be honest with himself in new ways. He did not have all the answers about what this meant for him, but he understood that the previous night's experience was more than just a whimsical party stunt. It was a glimpse into territory he had not dared explore before. His world, small as it had seemed at times, suddenly felt a lot bigger, and that was both thrilling and daunting. But as he recalled the weight of the wig, the click of the heels, and the flash of the sequins, he found himself smiling. He was certain that this wasn't something he could bury or dismiss. He had discovered a facet of who he was, one that felt too genuine to deny. Placing the wig back on its stand, he finished his breakfast, thinking about how his friends would react in the coming days, once the novelty of the party wore off. Perhaps some acquaintances would raise eyebrows, ask awkward questions, or try to tease him. And maybe some would offer unexpected understanding. But Janelle, Priya, and Raphael had already proven that they were ready to support him. In the end, that was all he truly needed at this stage, to know he wasn't alone. Later that afternoon, he got dressed in his usual jeans and sneakers to run a few errands. Sliding his feet into the worn shoes, he noted how different they felt from the delicate heels. But that difference no longer felt like an obligation to conform. It just felt like another option. He grabbed the keys and stepped outside, the winter chill making him tighten his jacket. As he walked to his car, he passed by a glass storefront and caught a glimpse of himself. For years, he had seen the same reflection, barely paying it any mind. Now, though, he paused for just a second. He saw the same messy hair, the same hoodie silhouette, but his eyes told another story. They carried a subtle brightness he had not noticed before. Turning away from the window, he climbed into his car, smile lingering on his lips. He was ready for the day, ready for whatever came next. Although so many questions buzzed in his mind, he felt a steady sense of certainty. The grand costume party had shown him a piece of himself that he would never be able to ignore. And as he drove off to tackle mundane errands, the memory of midnight blue sequins and swirling curls promised that his life had shifted, just enough to open up new paths he had only glimpsed from a distance. The knowledge lit a small flame of hope and exhilaration in his chest, reminding him of the freedom he experienced on that dance floor, twirling in heels and shimmering under the lights. He might not have all the words for it yet, but he knew it was real, and that was enough to keep him moving forward.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.